Welcome back to Camp Bucky, and the second in my series of SRV driving tutorials. I want to start by revisiting the previous lesson and going through another exercise which will help you to improve the accuracy of your yaw maneuvers. Find yourself a flat area where you're surrounded by rocks and park the SRV in the middle of it. This area just north of the camp is perfect for this. The idea of the exercise is to pick rocks either side of where you're facing and perform smaller versions of the turns we practiced in the first lesson, with the aim of ending up facing those rocks as accurately as possible. If you miss slightly, like I have here, then perform another correction to get it perfect. Practicing very small turns is just as valuable as large ones, perhaps more so since these are the kind of maneuvers you'll be doing constantly in order to stay on course during the rally. The narrow angle of these turns is as much to do with the shallowness of your pitch when you apply roll as it is about how much roll you then apply. The two movements need to work in combination. Again, if you miss, then try to correct slightly to line up perfectly. Okay, so that's another exercise to practice, but let's move on to the subject of bouncing, choosing landing spots and learning to hit them accurately. Drive out to one edge of this flat plane. What we're going to do now is head across this area at reasonable speed, hopping over rocks and other obstacles with a focus on thinking about where we want our next bounce to be, holding boost to stay afloat over the obstacles until we get there, and then releasing boost to drop exactly onto our chosen landing spot. Use this exercise to learn the gravity of the planet and get a feel for how long you can stay afloat and how quickly the SRV drops back down to the ground again. When you reach the edge of this area, just turn around and head back across it again, repeating the exercise. One issue you'll constantly face is making a decision about whether you have enough boost to stay afloat over the next obstacle, or whether you need to drop and bounce before it. If you find yourself on a section that has no rocks, like here, just use areas of light and shade as your targets. Bounce on the shade, jump over the light. Also, start to look for mounds and practice bouncing off the top of them, hitting boost the instant you make contact to launch back into the air. Mounds act as kickers and will give you a lot more altitude. In long-distance travel, altitude is your friend. More time in the air means less time in contact with the hazardous ground that wants to clutch at your wheels and spin you round, and more time to correct your attitude and accelerate. Again, hit boost the instant you make contact with the mound for maximum altitude. It might seem counterintuitive, but when you're travelling across country, you actually want to avoid really flat areas of ground in front of you and actively seek out rough patches with lumps and bumps to bounce off. Obviously, try to avoid actual rocks and also watch out for especially steep-sided mounds, both of which will catch on the SRV, damage it, and potentially bring you to a juddering halt.
Handbrake is on.
Okay, Commanders, that's it for today's lesson. Keep practicing these techniques, and before you know it, you'll find yourself bounding across the landscape at surprisingly high speeds. We'll see you back at Camp Bucky for another lesson soon.